Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at a chess game that I played a couple hours ago, where this is probably just going to be one of the worst games that you're going to see today, and probably one of the worst games that I've ever played. But either way, we're going to get into it. My opponent starts off the game with e4, and I decided to play the move c6, which is the Caro-Kann defense. Of course, I can play c5, which is the Sicilian, but I decided not to play this right now because I wasn't feeling the sharpest do this game, and you're going to see why. But either way, c6, my opponent goes d4, and I play the move d5, common Caro-Kann play, or just taking the center, and my opponent goes to this line with knight c3. This is a very, very common line, one of the most common. The other one is like e5, which is mostly played at higher levels, and here black has two moves, either bishop c5, bishop f5, or the move c5, but instead my opponent goes knight c3. I play the move d takes e4, which is basically forced in this line, and my opponent decides to play this move bishop to c4, which is a little bit odd and not what normally is played here, because of course it allows black to hang on to the pawn. After knight takes e4, we would get a very interesting game. I would have to choose which line I would play. I would either play move knight f6 and get into a more positional game after takes, or I would play the move bishop f5 and get into a little bit more of a tactical game after some position like this. But either way, that doesn't really matter because bishop c4, and after the move knight f6, black is just comfortably better. But this is a real thing. This is the von Henning gambit, and actually this is a kind of a tricky line to play. The idea is that white is going to be playing the move f3. Many lines here, the computer doesn't like this move, but it's actually one of the most reasonable moves in the position. And what black has to do is take this pawn, a knight takes f3, and play very, very simple, and just like try not to believe that white has anything. The first thing that black really has to do is get their pieces out, because these pieces are the problem pieces in this position. So the move here is actually pretty obvious. The move is bishop to f5, and the idea is that white is going to have some play over on the king, but with the bishop on f5, there's not really going to be much of anything, because after knight e5, let's say e6 and castles, I can simply drop my bishop back to g6, and life is actually very, very good for black, being up a pawn and with some targets in the center and on the queen side. One other thing, if I don't play that move, there's this move rook takes f5 and knight f7, which would be a fork, which would be bad, so we're not going to do that. But anyway, bishop g6 would be in the right way to play, but instead of that, I don't do that move, and I play not a very good move. I play and this is something that I have to work on, the move that I play in this game. This is something that I seriously have to work on, which is the fact that you don't always have to fiend kettle your dark sword bishop in positions with black. Like, come on, dude. Bringing out the bishop the traditional way is also okay. I honestly don't know why I don't do that, but for some reason I'm always inclined to fiend kettle my bishop. Don't know why. I have to work on that. But either way, that's what I do with the move g6, which immediately gives white a very, very healthy advantage. And already black is in some trouble. Move knight e5 happens. I thought that I had to play this move, but actually I didn't have to play this move. I thought I had to play the move e6. But now actually my position is worse because of this knight very poorly placed on the f6 square, the fact that my king still hasn't castled, and the fact that I'm blocking in my light squared bishop in many cases here, with the pawns greatly hindering the development of my pieces. The move castles is what my opponent chooses, which I thought made a lot of sense. I actually thought that my opponent might want to play a move like bishop to g5 first, and do something like this, with this pin being very, very irritating. But I guess actually this gives me the option of playing bishop e7 instead of bishop g7, so this might be a little bit of an inaccurate variation. Either way, knight e5 e6. The move I have to play here, by the way, is bishop to e6, allowing the doubling of my pawns, but black is surviving. Instead, e6 castles, bishop to g7, and the move bishop to g5 is what my opponent chooses, with a serious amount of pressure on my knight. And the immediate threat here is that my opponent is just going to play queen f3. Just going to play queen f3 and win the knight, or play this move and win the knight. Probably not queen f3 actually, because this pawn is hanging, so this move is the threat, and he's just going to win the knight because the knight is pinned here, and if my knight comes to try and defend, this knight simply captures it, and I would be losing a piece and losing the game, which is not something that I want to do. So I realized that, and I had to avoid it. Also here, I realized that my position was worse. That fact was not lost on me, but whatever, not much you can really do when your position is worse like this. I decided to go with the move h6, though, because I realized, of course, that if my opponent moves backwards, my opponent's threat is this, right? So I have to do something immediate. And after my opponent drops back his bishop, I'm going to play the move g5 and kick him out all the way, which, of course, is a little bit dangerous for my king, but is necessary in a position like this, unfortunately. The best move for white here is this move bishop takes f6, which I thought made sense because after bishop f6, I thought my opponent could just play knight e4, have a very, very comfortable position. I can't move this back because of this simple fork, right? So I would have to take here. My opponent will take, I will trade the queens, and what ends up happening in this position is that even though it looks like black is just up a pawn, there's nothing I can do. Like, the best move here has to be castles, but my opponent is just going to actually shatter, well, not shatter me. My opponent is just going to stop me from moving with a move like knight f6 and something like rook d6. Now I can't move any of my pieces. I'm paralyzed, and I'm just going to lose the game. Probably have to do something like knight a6 and just lose, which is not what we want. This is lost because of these pawns, and white is just going to win a pawn. Now I'd be losing. So this position would be really bad for me, and that's kind of what my opponent needs to do. But instead of that, he goes with the move bishop to h4, and now actually black is back in the game, and I've gotten a second lease on life. I play the move g5, which is the best move. My opponent goes bishop to g3, of course. Makes a lot of sense. I don't really think there's an idea of bishop f2 because that would block the rook. I know maybe you're like, oh, well, that stabilizes the pawn in the center, but the pawn isn't actually white's biggest problem here. White doesn't really have many problems, and the bishop is more active on this square. Either way, I castle my king, which I thought was best. It is correct. It's actually the only move that isn't completely lost for black, because if I don't do this, then this pawn is going to be weak forever, and I'm probably just going to lose the game. My opponent decides to play the move king to h1 after a long think. His opponent spent 20 seconds on this move, which is just a really bad time spent. I don't actually know the idea of king to h1. I guess the idea was that this pawn wouldn't be hanging with check, but that seems really stupid. And honestly, I thought my opponent could already like start opening stuff up with h4, and I would be in like a world of trouble. Like, I don't even know what I would play here. I actually just have no idea what I would play here because there's all kinds of threats. Like, my opponents might be able to like sack the rook for the knight in some lines and then bring the queen to h4 already, and it just looks like black is getting butchered even though black is up a pawn. But instead my opponent plays a little bit passive with the move king to h1, and I realize, okay, well, now is my time to do something. I have to do something immediately. I thought about what I was trying to do. And I played the wrong move. I thought, okay, in this position, I thought black was better. Which is probably wrong, actually. I just thought black had a pretty decent position, and I didn't see many immediate wins for white, which is true. But actually, white has some ways of being able to keep putting pressure on black, and it's honestly black on the defense here still. But I didn't realize that, and I thought that I could play a little more positionally and less tactically than I should have. And the move that I really should have played is the move knight bd7. And the reason why I didn't play this is because I thought that knight bd7, what's the real threat? Like, okay, I'm trying to take this knight, right? That's the idea. But after knight takes, bishop takes, it just felt like I was kind of being butchered along all these diagonals, and I didn't like this. Like, okay, maybe I'm going to lose my my darts for bishop. They're going to trade darts for bishops. My king feels really airy. I just didn't like that position. So I didn't go for knight bd7. The best move here is knight d5. But I also didn't really like this. I didn't really like this move either, because I'm like, why am I allowing the queen to come in? That was like actually my main concern. I'm like, but why is the queen coming into h5? That seems very bad for me. Like I don't know why I'm allowing that at all. And actually, yeah, queen h5 is the best move. I can't even go over a move like this because of knight takes f7, and I'm just lost. Like this is just game over here. Probably. I don't even know what could be a move for probably like bishop here, right? Yeah, like bishop here. I'm threatening mate. If I take this, then there's like some mate probably. I don't care. But yeah, this is just not good for me. That's the point. And I didn't really enjoy that idea. So actually the only move after knight d5 and queen h5, I have to play f5, which I just didn't see. But whatever. Instead, I thought of this very interesting idea to play the move c5. And the plan after c5 is that, okay, after you take, I'm giving my pawn back, but what I'm doing now is I'm going to be able to get development. I'm going to trade the queens. That's the first thing. And then I'm going to be developing my pieces. I'm probably going to put my knight on this square, get this knight out of the way. I didn't want this pawn to come here and like defend everything. I thought this move really destabilized the knight at the same time. So I was very happy when I found this move. And actually, this move doesn't work at all, which is just insane. The move d5 here is just a crushing blow for white. And after e takes d5, knight takes d5, takes. This is just game over. I mean, I couldn't, honestly, while game reviewing this, I couldn't believe that this position was just like completely lost here. I thought that I would have like something like bishop e6. Just doesn't work. I just lose the rook, and I thought this position was good, but from a distance I thought that position was good, but my opponent doesn't find it and instead plays another move, the move knight to e2. And here I'm like, wow, that's stupid. You're giving me your center pawn and you're allowing me to like develop my pieces. I feel like that's good for me. I feel like that's pretty good for me. But it's not, again, and there's a reason why this game is at 65 or something % accuracy, because we both played pretty bad moves. I pretty quickly played c takes on d4 because I'm like, okay, obviously this is the best move. I mean, I'm destabilizing the knight, I'm getting rid of your center pawn. That's exactly what I want to do. I'm not even losing a pawn anymore. Actually, I have to play knight bd7 again and go for this line. And if you take on c5 now, there's like some I just recapture. Okay, great, love my life. And like this is coming or something stupid, like the bishop is under fire. But either way, whatever, that doesn't happen. C takes d4, knight takes d4, and I played this very, very interesting move after a decent bit of thought because I could not find a move for the life of me. In all honesty, the move here is really, really hard to find. I have to do like a queenside stuff. I have to go a5. That's one of the top engine moves. The real top engine move is this crazy move knight a6. I don't even, like, what am I doing with knight a6? I just thought this was stupid. Why would I allow this? Like, now my pawns are doubled. I just like, why am I doing this? Like, okay, I thought knight ec6 or something, queen d7, and this is just looks stupid, right? This looks stupid because, I mean, now my opponent's getting into that square. Maybe he also might like have stuff like this in the future, not right now, but like in the future this can be like a little bit frightening. Of course here he would just be losing the knight, but like in the future, I mean, that could be a threat. I was honestly very, very scared of that position, so I'm like, why would I ever go knight a6? And I thought of a different idea, which basically was very, very aggressive. The idea was to target this knight, which is weak, and put some pressure on my opponent's king side in some lines. So I played the move queen to b6, which does what I want. It targets this knight. The idea is rook d8 now, targets this pawn, which is also good, and it kind of goes after here in some lines. Like if my opponent's bishop goes here, I mean knight e4 is already crushing because I'm attacking this knight, I'm attacking the bishop. My opponent already has to play knight f7 and get into this line. After rook takes f7, bishop g1 takes, and bishop takes d4, and this is good for me. Yeah, great. Yeah, that's easy to find. No, but queen b6 doesn't work, again, due to a million moves of white. And the move that my opponent played also freaked me out. My opponent here went with a move that I thought was very, very good. In fact, it's not, but I thought that it was a very, very nice move, and it made a lot of sense. And I was already feeling like the pressure was on, and I'm like one step away from getting checkmated. Like, I'm already getting super worried about rook f6 in all lines. Like, this is terrifying. Really, really scary stuff with all his pieces pointing at my king. Like, these three pieces, this queen coming in, I mean, it looks like checkmate, right? But either way, my opponent goes for a different line. My opponent goes with the move h4, and I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. That's probably the best move, right? Because h4, that's like targeting my pawn structure, trying to break out. Definitely a good move. Why would it not be a good move? I don't know what to play. I'm freaking out. I'm actually very, very scared. I'm gonna just, I don't know. I'm gonna play rook d8, which doesn't work either. Adding to the long list of inaccuracies and blunders in this game, rook d8 is my only double question mark for this game. Rook d8 just allows him to do whatever he wants. The move that I gotta play is just knight e4, which is actually pretty easy to see. Sorry. Give me a second. Had to deal with something real quick. My bad. Let's get back into the chess. But knight e4 is actually very, very easy to see, because I'm just targeting the bishop. I'm targeting the knight. The bishop has to go back to h2, and then I can like develop my pieces like knight d7, for example. And my position is very, very good. And if you're ever going to take here, I don't know. Well, here I'd win the piece, but I mean, even just h takes g5. And black is probably better. Either way, rook d8. The reason why this is bad is because it allows rook takes f6, and I would be losing the game. Not good stuff. Not good stuff at all. Not good stuff at all. Because the point of this is that after I take the rook, my opponent is going to be getting into the queen, threatening this. And what I originally calculated was this move bishop takes e5, bishop takes e5, and I didn't see any mate. But actually here, my opponent just plays rook f1. And this is a little bit insane. Like, that's not something that you would originally like see ever. The point of this is that I can't make a move. Like, if I go rook f8 now, bishop takes e5 is winning because my king can't escape fast enough. If I go rook here, I'm blocking these pieces so that there's already probably like knight e6 stuff, and I'm losing. And if I go with queen c7, the very simple move bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, and this is probably just a win for the white side after a move like, not there. Queen e7 is the only move. And yeah, I'm threatening everything. This is losing. But either way, that doesn't happen. My opponent, again, plays a decent move here. He just plays move c3, which is obviously good, defending the knight. And I get a little bit carried away, seeing that, okay, well, I couldn't take the pawn on b2 beforehand, because then I would be lost, because there's just no play. My queen isn't ever getting out. The knight is defended. But at this point, I was a little bit skeptical that his pawn on b2 was now accurately defended properly. And I'm like, wait, the pawn on b2, now I can like loop over here, immediately start targeting these pieces in the center that are a little bit misplaced. And I'm like, you know what? I'm down to be up 2 pawns. Let's take on b2, which is honestly probably the best try in the position. And it's very, very, it's just very, very bad. My opponent can win in a variety of ways. Flashiest being knight takes f7, and I can't even take. I have to go queen takes c3. But either way, queen takes b2. My opponent doesn't find it. My opponent goes with h takes g5, which also makes sense. I just took back on g5. I thought it was the only move. And my opponent decides to take a breather here and not play the best move and not go all in. He has to go rook takes f6 here, which I knew was probably the best move. In all honesty, I was kind of tricking myself into believing my position was okay. I knew my position was lost, but I wanted to believe that I might be able to survive here. But rook takes f6 is just game over. Instead of that, though, he goes bishop to d3, And it feels like this is not the correct preparatory move because the bishop on d3 doesn't really do as much on the bishop as the bishop on c4 anyway, because the bishop on c4 is already like stopping this piece from developing very well due to it being a little bit pinned down to the defense of this pawn. But now, since it's left, I'm like, okay, well, that's good. Also, he spent 3 minutes on this move, which is insane. I guess he didn't want to lose, which makes sense. And I have to find a move again. The game review here actually has a little bit of a malfunction. The move here that I play is Stockfish's top choice at a higher depth. I'm only at like depth 22 right now, so it's not that high. But at a higher depth, this is Stockfish's top choice, which I thought was really the only move for black to like survive here, which is this very, very interesting move, knight to c6. And I'm just saying, okay, I give up. In all honesty, I give up. This is really, really difficult. I know I'm lost, but if like you trade off the knights, like here, I'm like, okay, maybe I have a chance. And actually I do. Bishop to b7 threatens the knight and like targets the mating square, and it's not over. My opponent has to find some very clutch moves in order to survive here. Knight takes d8, rook takes d8, rook takes b7, and rook takes d3 show black actually getting a very strong advantage in the position, which is just mind-blowing. But instead of that, my opponent finally finds their nerves and plays the best move, the move that we've all remembered, the move rook takes f6. And this is, of course, what they were calculating for those 3 minutes. On this move, this is what they were doing. But rook takes f6, and the black position is dead. Black position is simply dead. If my opponent goes active for the rest of the game, I lose every single time. I take on f6. And here, as a final mistake in the game, the last mistake made. After this, all the moves were the best moves. My opponent plays the move queen to h5 and loses the game. The move that they had to play, let's start off with the move they had to play. The move they had to play first was the move knight d takes c6. Why? Because after the move b takes c6, now queen h5 is a good move, because after queen takes a1, king to h2, there's the move I guess it's my move. I don't have a move. I don't have a move. He's threatening mate here. He's threatening like a come in here. I can't do anything. Like this is just like if I take here, for example, he just comes in with a bishop. This is just game over. I can try to run my king. At the end of the day, I just thought queen h8 here and bishop f6 and like this. And I finished calculating here because, I mean, that's game over. And I realized that in this position, my opponent is able to play the move queen to h5 and win the game, but not if they do it like this. Because in this line, after queen takes a1 check, king to h2, now my knight survives, and my opponent runs out of firepower to checkmate me with. They obviously thought that they would have enough play with the bishop coming in here, the knight coming in like to this square maybe or something crazy, that they would be able to win the game, but they are not in time. And after the move knight takes e5, I'm winning. I'm actually just winning, and there's nothing my opponent can do. He gives me this check on h7. I go king g7. My opponent brings the bishop back, and I simply play the move rook to h8, and my opponent resigns the game with probably the worst game that both of us has ever played. Yeah, I got 69% accuracy, and my opponent had 61% accuracy, which is pretty terrible. Both estimated ratings of 1800. Pretty awful for my level, but I mean, it was a crazy game, and there was just so many issues. Like rook d8, the entire opening was flawed. Like playing g6, just an awful move. There was so much bad here. Queen b6, rook d8, so much awful stuff going on. But either way, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found this entertaining, instructive, all of the above. If you did, remember to like, subscribe. Don't normally these YouTubers tell you to do. And yeah, that's it. Good evening and good night.